Hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. You are audible, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. We will wait for a few more minutes and we'll start around 6 o'clock. Uh, okay, so hi everybody. I am Geetika Agarwal. I am a PhD scholar at the Center for Ecological Sciences in IIC Bangalore. And today is your first tutorial session for the course Wildlife Ecology, taken by Dr. Ankur Awadhiya. And there will be two more tutors for this course, Shakur and Chiti, and they'll be taking your tutorials on Monday and Tuesday, respectively. So, should we start with today's tutorial? I would like to keep it more interactive so that like we have a back and forth conversation. It will be more like a discussion, and please feel free to stop me anytime and ask me any of your doubts that you may have, or put them in the chat box. And to inform everybody, this session will be recorded for putting it up on YouTube later. Okay, so let's begin. Can you all see my pointer? Okay, thank you. Yeah. So, do you guys like spending time outdoors? Have you like ever gone to a safari or to a national reserve or just to your backyards and sat there for some time? So, would you like to share some of your experiences that you might have, or like what do you like about spending time outdoors?
Ma'am, have you shared the screen?
Yes. Is it not visible to you?
No, ma'am.
Oh, wait. I thought it should be visible to everybody. One second. Thank you for informing. Oh, it is visible to one of you, some of you. Can everybody look at this screen? It says, do you like spending time outdoors? And there are some 4 or 5 images.
Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay. Yeah, so where was I? I was asking you guys, do you like spending time outdoors and what do you like about the nature in general? Can some of you tell me about your experiences? Anybody? Like, have you never gone for a morning walk, for a stroll, and you would have heard all these birds chirping during the morning chorus? Or maybe you would have gone to a zoo and looked at some of these creatures. Or just like that, you would have seen some beautiful flowers in your backyard or in a garden or just fields around you. Do you observe anything special when you go outside? Or like what? I just want to know what motivated you guys to take this course, to opt for this course. Yeah, you can go ahead and unmute yourself. Whoever raised their hand. No one? Okay, let's move ahead with the first week of your lectures. So, your first lecture was about uh, Introduction to Ecology. So, have you all watched the three lectures that were given this week? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. So, here are a few questions. What is ecology? Can anybody tell me what is ecology? Anyone? Any terms that come to your mind? Any guesses?
Household study.
Okay, yes, ecology comes from two terms, oikos and logos. Oikos stands for household and logos stands for study. So it is the study of household of, say, our household or the of other animals' household, say a tiger's. Where does a tiger stay, or where does an elephant live? What else? What else is ecology? Does anything come to your mind when you think about, the nature where there are multiple organisms? Oh, exactly. Yes, Laksha. Study of organisms and their interactions with the environment. That is absolutely correct. And from this, we get to know about the distribution of the organisms and the abundance of these organisms. So, from this question, we would like to ask, what is this distribution of organisms and what is abundance? Can any of you tell me what is distribution of organisms? What is the distribution of organisms? What is distribution? Anyone? Its habitat. Okay. Not really. But yeah, an organism is found in its habitat. The habitat is uh, where it mostly sustains itself. But the distribution of an organism more generally refers to the entire range of geographical locations where that organism is found. That is what we refer to as, that is the distribution of that organism. These is all the areas where this organism will be found. Okay, for example, say if we talk about mynas, they are found all throughout the Indian subcontinent. So we would say that the Indian subcontinent is the distribution of this organism. And what do we mean by the abundance of an organism? Anyone? What is abundance? What do we mean by when we say that the difference between a distribution and the habitat of an organism? So basically, the distribution will be the entire area where the organism is found, where it is, the entire geographical range where it is distributed. That is mostly referred to as the distribution of the organism. Habitat is that particular uh, place. Basically, it's a smaller region. For example, you would say that the distribution of, say, tigers is throughout India, or not throughout India, say in West Bengal. But the habitat particularly is where they're found, the exact forest where they're found, and what sort of a vegetation they stay in, and what sort of a prey they prey upon, all these things. And Saptrishi is saying component of species diversity related to species evenness. So, yes, exactly. Anish is correct. The number of organisms that are found in that geographical area is referred to as the abundance of organisms. Basically, it means it is measuring what number of organisms are present in a unit area. So you would say that a species range is all the geographical locations that the species is found in, but the species abundance is the number of individuals in a particular area of belonging to that species, that we will refer to as the abundance. Evenness more often refers to as how evenly are the species distributed. If there are, say, 5 species in a region, some of them will be more in number, some of them will be less in number. So evenness refers to that, how evenly are the species distributed in a given area. Now, next question would be, what are the factors that affect the distribution and the abundance of, say, a given species? In fact, yes, exactly. Abiotic and biotic factors. So, can you give me some examples of these abiotic factors? Weather, exactly. So it depends on the weather, it depends on the temperature conditions, it depends upon the topography, that is the landscape of the area, very good. It depends on the landscape and on the species pool dispersal, biotic. Exactly, yes. Resource availability, it depends on the type of food that is available in that area. It depends on the temperature. It depends on the humidity of the area. It depends on the amount of water that is available in that area for the organism to survive. And some of the biotic factors, as you mentioned, would be the interactions it has with other organisms. Say if it's competition, that it's being driven out of that area by some other species because they're competing for, say, a similar resource. For example, if there's a deer and there are cattle that are feeding on the same grass, then one of them is going to drive out the other from that area. They're competing for the same resource. So if one of them is uh, good at, using that resource, is better at using that resource as compared to the other one, then they will drive them out from that area. And then there is predation, exactly, that also depends, that also relates to resource availability. For example, if your resource is a live organism, then that is a biotic factor that is affecting your distribution and your abundance in a particular area. So if an area has a low amount of prey, then the predator abundance in that area will be low because they do not have enough food for all of them to survive. And if the prey abundance is high, if there is a lot of prey there in that area, then the predator abundance is also bound to increase. So these are the few things that were discussed in the first lecture. Then what is a habitat? So can you answer what is a habitat? One of you already did. Oh, sorry. Yeah. What is a habitat? Yes, the place where an organism lives. Roughly, that is the correct definition. The place where that organism makes its home. So that is correct. So a habitat, it meets all the environmental conditions and also the biotic conditions that the organism would need to survive. It is a natural home of the plant or an animal. Very good. That is correct. So it is an area where that organism can survive. It will not be, competed out of that area. It is able to live there, and it is able to sustain itself. It is able to find the resources to fulfill its needs, and also other conditions like the temperature and the water, everything is optimum for it to live there. And okay, moving on. What is biodiversity? What do we mean by when we say that what is the biodiversity of an area? Exactly. So different species and different organisms that are found in an area is called the biodiversity of that place. Then biodiversity in general, it is a term which is used to measure variation. This variation can be at the genetic level. What is the genetic biodiversity of this population or of this species? What is the species biodiversity of this habitat? Like, what are the different species that this ecosystem or that this place can have? And there can be an ecosystem level of biodiversity. What are the different ecosystems that are found in in a particular area? Any doubts? Is this clear to everybody? We're just going over some very basic things that were discussed in the first chapter. Okay, thank you. Moving on. So, how do you define interactions? What are interactions? What is an interaction? When you say that you're interacting with somebody, what does that really mean?
When we communicate or like react to something with somebody, with a lot of people or something, like two organisms or species interact with each other.
Yes, correct. That is very correct, Shruti. So interactions basically refer uh, to the impact of what that one species might have over another species that is living, that its habitat overlaps with. For example, two species, they share space, they live in a similar region. So what? How are they interacting with each other? Organisms depend on the other, correct. Dependency of one species on another for food or shelter, that is also correct. Relationship between abiotic and biotic. Yeah, that is also one form of an interaction between that you have with your abiotic environment, the environment around you. And can somebody give me a few examples of these interactions, some basic interactions that you would observe in your life or anything? Langur and Cheetal, yes, that was covered in the lecture. Langur and Cheetal interaction, very nice. So basically, how the langurs they live up on the treetops, and the cheetals they're always found to follow them around. They're always found below those trees where there are langurs. And why is so? Because these langurs are they have a vantage point when they're high on the tree, and they're able to look. They have a far off viewpoint. They can look out for predators, and when they do so, they call out. They give loud alarm calls, and uh, this alarms the cheetal. This tells the cheetal that there is a potential predator, and you should find. And they in turn they find a shelter. They hide from that predator or they run away. So that is why you find langurs and cheetals interacting with each other. Mutualistic interactions, yes, there are different types of interactions. One of them is mutualism. Lichens, yes, lichens is an interaction between fungi and algae. Can we use the interaction term in case of microbial colonies? Yes, you can use interactions in those terms as well. Mycorrhizae as well are interactions of fungi with plants. Humans and pets is also a form of interaction where you are providing a shelter and you're providing food to your pet, and the pet is in turn is making you happy. So that is one form of an interaction. So somebody mentioned mutualism. So do you guys know what are different types of interactions out there, or how do we classify interactions broadly? Anything? Commensalism, amensalism, mutualism. Yes. So can somebody tell me what these means? Okay, somebody has written already. There are beneficial interactions, there are detrimental, there are neutral interactions. So can you guys please match these with what they mean? What is a mutualism? What is an amensalism? What is a commensalism?
Ma'am, in case of mutualism, both the partners will be benefited, and this strategy is actually indispensable for their survival. I mean, both the partners. Uh, in
Yes.
case of
Yes.
in case of amensalism, one partner might get the benefit while other partner is usually not getting the benefit, rather harmful interactions. And in commensalism, this reaction is usually benefited, but this reaction is not reciprocal to each organism. That means one organism might get benefited, but other organism might not get any apparent benefit.
You are a little wrong here. Amensalism is the one in which one of them is benefited while the other stays unaffected from that interaction. And commensalism is the one in which one is affected and the other one is harmed from that
Okay,
interaction.
okay. So,
Yes. So, can anybody give me an example of one example of a mutualism, one example of an amensalism, and one example of a commensalism? Anyone? Anything basic? What is a mutualism is lichens? Yes. Yes, very
ma'am,
basic.
colonization of the bacteria in the legume root nodules. That is also an example of mutualism.
Yes, they get shelter and the plant gets nutrients from them. Bacteria and humans have mutualism very good. Yes, the gut microbia that we have, they are in a mutualistic relationship with our body. Yes, bees and flowers. Yes, the bees will pollinate the flowers, and the flowers in turn are providing nectar to these bees. Very good. And what would be an example of an amensalism, where one is benefited and the other is unaffected from that interaction? A snake and a frog. How is that a mensalism? How can you please elaborate? I think that would mostly be a commensalism where the snake feeds upon the frog, but I don't know what you might have in mind. Anybody for an amensalism? So, a very basic example of an amensalism would be somewhere where, say, a lion makes a kill and it eats it and it's full, it does not want to eat anymore and it leaves the carcass there. But then the scavengers are going to scavenge on this and it's going to serve as their food or as their resource. So, in this interaction between the lion and the scavengers, technically the lion is unaffected by the scavengers eating the the prey that it left behind. Or where uh, there's an interaction between a small fish that is moving next to a large fish like a shark or something, and when the shark makes a prey, some of the food elements it leaves behind, and like when it eats the prey, a lot of the food is it gets like wasted near the mouth parts of the shark, and these small fish they stay there and then they consume these things, so the shark remains unaffected but the small fish get food. And okay, so let's talk about commensalism now. What would be an example of a commensalism that is very simple? It is the two species interaction in which the impact of one species on the other is negative. Only that will impact the second species the first. Okay, I may have confused something with something else here. So, Saptrishi, you are saying that amensalism is one in which one species is negatively impacted but the other is unharmed.
Yes, ma'am. I might think so, ma'am. Can you please verify, ma'am?
Oh, yes, sure. I will verify that in a minute. 1 second. I think I might have confused two things here then. Sorry, I was incorrect about that one. Amensalism is a form of interaction in which one of them is negatively impacted and the other is unaffected by that interaction. I'm
Okay,
sorry.
ma'am. Thank you.
I confused that with the commensalism, where commensalism is positive for one of them and the other one is unaffected. And what I was talking about, where one is positively affected and the other is harmed, that is just predation or a negative interaction. Yes, so we were talking about egret, buffalo, and cattle. Yes, so egret and buffalo, when they egret and buffalo or cattle. So when the buffalo or a cattle is moving through the grass, it's eating, it's minding its own business, but the egret sticks around because whenever they disturb the grass while grazing, there are going to be some of the insects that are going to fly out, and the egret is going to feed on them. So the buffalo is largely unaffected by that, but the egret is positively impacted. Okay. Yes. So, okay, yeah. So about that amensalism, which is negative impact on one but unaffected by the other, that example would be where penicillin, it secretes, is a drug that kills bacteria, in which the bacteria that is secreting penicillin remains unaffected, but the other bacteria dies. Okay. So, do you all guys know what are the different levels of organization that we see around us? Organization of, say, an ecosystem. Anybody? What are the various levels of organization? Species, population, community, and ecosystem. So, yes, that is correct. So, first of all, what comes first is an organism. That is an individual that belongs to a single species, and it's a single individual. Then there is a population, which are multiple organisms belonging to the same species. They form a population that live together in a certain geographical region. Then these populations, when they come together, so populations of different species that stay together in a particular region, that form a community. And when uh, the various communities, the entire community which is living together along with its non-living environment, that forms an ecosystem. And various ecosystems, they form a biome, and the various biomes together form the biosphere on this earth. So yes, there can be one more level of classification where various ecosystems form a landscape or a biome. So can anybody tell me what is a biosphere? What is the biosphere? Someone raised their hand. Yes, do you want to say something? I'm asking what is a biosphere? What is the biosphere? The final level of, yes, it is the sum of all ecosystems, okay, but yeah, so okay, basically the biosphere, yes. So we have various distinctions. We have the atmosphere, we have the lithosphere, we have the hydrosphere, and all of these together with the life that they support is called the biosphere. So the portion of the earth that in general supports life is totally called the biosphere. So coming to the different approaches that we take to study ecology or the field of ecology. So, can you tell me what is going on in these different images? What are people doing in the first image here? Can anybody tell me what is going on? Yeah, all of them are field approaches. Very nice, Brunel. So, what is happening in the first image? So basically, what is happening is they are measuring the the diameter of the, yes, measurement of the tree trunk. So they are measuring the diameter of the tree trunk, and this measurement is used for various purposes by ecologists. It is also used to overall measure the biomass that is present in that particular area or in that forest. The image here shows where these people, they have they sweep the grass, or they sweep the area with these nets in order to trap uh, the arthropods in that area in order to collect the insects. Yes, all of these images show the observation in the field. So in this particular image, they basically sweep the area with these nets, and whatever insects or arthropods they collect, they then sample these, and then they make these observations. What is happening in this image? Is anybody aware of this method? Yes, Mugila, you can go ahead. You know. So basically, this is called the quadrat method, where they've laid down this grid, and they may or may not lay further grids in this. And exactly, it's a quadrat method which they use for sampling plants or grasses in that area. Next, what is this? You guys would have seen this in the lecture video. What does this graph signify or show? Yeah, it is the relationship between the predator and the prey, or EY predator relationship. It's a prey predator relationship. There's a prey predator model. Yes, so basically, this is what you get from the Lotka Volterra equations of the prey predator interactions. So, here, when you notice that the prey abundance is high, the predator abundance is also high, but eventually, because of these many predators, the prey abundance comes down because all of them have been feeding on this prey. And as the prey abundance will go down, the resources for the predators have also gone down, eventually leading to a decline in the predator abundance as well. And this is a cyclical relationship between a prey and predator abundance. If the prey goes up, the amount of predators go up, and if the amount of predators go up, the prey goes down, and if the prey goes down, the amount of predators also comes down. Okay, so moving on. So this is what is this approach of ecology called, where we have modeled this relationship between a prey and a predator? What do we call this approach of ecology? Yes, this is the Lotka Volterra model, but I'm asking is, what is this approach of? Yes, we use statistics in ecology, but there is a particular term that I'm looking for. Exactly, it's a theoretical approach that we take for studying ecology. So this will be called the theoretical approach. We did the field approach, the theoretical approach, and what is this? What are people doing here? What can you see from these images? What is going on? Anyone? What can you make out of these images? Yeah, it's sort of a nursery. Yes, but what you can see is there are these multiple containers which have the same plant, but yes, it's in a controlled environment. These researchers, they might have controlled for different factors in these different buckets of these plants, and even here in these different pots, they could have controlled for different things. So what do you call this approach of ecology or research? Laboratory approach, yes. This will be called the laboratory or the experimental approach. Not always is the experimental approach in ecology carried out in a lab setting. So you can see that this is not really a lab, but yes, we could still call it an experimental approach. We are manipulating the various treatments to see how the yes, yes, Ramya. Okay. So we are manipulating these different. So we're manipulating the conditions in these different pots to see how these organisms respond to these different conditions. Yes, so that was all about the first lecture. Let's come to the second lecture, which was about the timeline of ecology. So, can any of you tell me who coined the term ecology? Who gave the term ecology? Hensley. No, that would be the wrong answer. Anybody? Any other guesses? It's all from the second lecture.
Ma'am, Ernst Haeckel.
Yes, very nice. Ernst Haeckel, he was the one who came up with the term ecology, where these two Greek words, oikos and logos, they were put together to form the term ecology, study of your household, as you said a few minutes back. So, can you tell me what is the taxonomic hierarchy? What is taxonomic hierarchy? Anyone? What do we mean by taxonomic? What is a hierarchy? Say. Anybody? Yes, we are referring to the kingdom phylum hierarchy, but okay, correct. So, what would be the other levels in this kingdom phylum? Exactly, arranging organisms into different levels based on how closely they are related to each other. That is what I was referring to by taxonomic hierarchy. And the various levels here would be kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, and species. Very nice. Yes. So, who came up with this taxonomic hierarchy? Which scientist gave this classification? Carolus Linnaeus. Very good. All of you know this. Carolus Linnaeus gave us this classification of taxonomic hierarchy. So, can you tell me some of the rules that we follow while scientifically naming an organism? How do you name an organism scientifically? Yes, Rahul, you have your hand raised.
So, for scientifically naming the organism, the name should correspond to the organism's traits. So, generally, the name will be of two words, the genus and species.
Very good. Yes.
And the word should be printed in italics. If it's written, the word should be separately underlined.
Yeah.
And the genus name would always start with a capital letter, and the species name should always start with small letter.
Very nice. You've listed out all of the things that the rules that we follow while scientifically naming an organism. Basically, you follow binomial nomenclature, as Saptrishi also mentioned. The first name is refers to the genus to which their organism belongs, and the second name refers to the species. So, how does scientifically naming different organisms help us? How does it help ecologists all around the world, or not just ecologists, any scientists or biologists in general all around the world? Anyone? How is binomial nomenclature helpful? Exactly. Very nice, Mrinal. Very nice, Arun and Saptrishi. All of you, you've answered it correctly. So basically, the use of this scientifically naming an organism is that we have a baseline. We have a, a a common reference point for everybody, because when you're using vernacular language, that changes from different regions. It changes from region to region. Even when you move from north to south in India, you would call different things by different names. So that will be very confusing if you are talking in your vernacular language or and you're calling something by its common name. So to reduce that burden, as mentioned by Saptarishi, you would like to use the scientific name so that you all know that you're talking about the same organism and not different organisms. So, okay, moving on. What are pull factors? And consequently, what are push factors? Yes, pull factors are the factors that attract an organism towards a particular area, and push factors would then be the factors that will Push factors include the optimization of access to key resources, while pull factors may include the evasion of risk. Uh, include the optimization of access to key resources. Okay, I did not really understand this. What Saptarishi you have written? Can you please tell me what you're talking about? Here, I'm referring to the pull and the push factors that were talked about in the second lecture, where pull factors meant the factors that basically attract an organism towards a particular habitat. So that, for example, if the temperature there is optimum for that organism to function, or if the water resources were there, or if the prey abundance was high, these would be some of the pull factors that will pull an organism towards a particular habitat. And some of the push factors would be some things that drive that organism away from that area. There is a high predator abundance, for example. The environment is hostile, the temperature is not optimum for it to live there. That is what I was referring to. So, what is competition? We've already discussed all of these interactions. So, what is competition? It is interaction or depend. Okay. Anything else? What is a competition? Yes, it would be a fight for survival. Basically, competition would mean that two species are they're having a negative interaction because they need the same resources. They want, or two individuals, they want to feed on the same resources, but it will depend on which one is stronger or which one is faster, and the other one will be negatively impacted, and one of them will get to the resource. Both the partners are negatively impacted if you need the same prey. Exactly. Two more species fighting for natural resources. Very nice. So, can anybody tell me what is the difference between interspecific and intraspecific competition? Intra is a member belonging of the same species. Exactly. Yes. So, intraspecific competition would be the competition between the members of the same species, and interspecific competition would be competition between two different species. Say, for example, if there's a herd of cattle that are grazing on the same patch of grass, so there will is definitely bound to be a competition between all these different individuals of the cattle, and who eats faster is going to get more resources, or the one who is stronger can fight and actually drive out other cattle from its patch, and it can eat all those resources. And interspecific competition is the competition between two different species for the same resources. For example, somebody has mentioned lion and tiger. If they're trying to prey upon an antelope, both of them will be competing. Hyena and lion, yes, you often see that in Discovery Channel. If a lion is going towards a prey and there's a pack of hyena also going towards the same prey, so that is some interspecific competition. So these were some of the things that were discussed in the second lecture. Can anybody tell me who came up with this entire competition, the idea of competition and interspecific competition? Which scientist was looking at all of this? I know this becomes a little history based, but who was this? No, it was not Darwin. It is somebody, it was mentioned in the lecture. So, can anyone tell me which one was it? Who was talking about competition in their works? No, not Theophrastus. Cause, no. Alfred, no. Anyone else would like to take a guess at who was it who was talking about competition and intraspecific competition? Okay, it was George Hutchinson. It was George Hutchinson who was talking about competition in his works. Okay, moving on. So let's talk about evolution. What is evolution and what is natural selection? What do we mean by evolution? Anybody, guys? You can write it up in the chat box. What is evolution?
Change of a particular species throughout the generation. Like there are some characteristic changes occurs throughout the generations.
You
That's
mean
called
over
evolution.
generations?
Yes, that's called evolution.
Yes, very good. That is evolution. Changes in the heritable characteristics of populations belonging to a species over time. Evolution is a gradual change in behavior and genes of species. Natural selection over a time. The change in the characteristics of a species over several generations relies on the process of natural selection. Very nice. So, what is natural selection? I'm sorry, I've already displayed the answer. Okay, so basically, natural selection is the process by which evolution occurs. It is likely to choose the organisms that are better adapted to that particular environment. They will survive, they will reproduce, they will leave behind more progeny, they will pass on their genes to the next generation, and the ones that are less adapted, they will be eliminated. Natural selection is when organisms that are more adapted to the environment are more likely to survive. Very good. Nice. Survival of the fittest. Great. So we've discussed evolution and natural selection. So now you can tell me who came up with the theory of evolution and with the theory of natural selection. This should be pretty easy. Everybody knows. Darwin. Yes. So Charles Darwin is the famed scientist who's come up with evolution and natural selection. Even Alfred Wallace was contemporarily working on the same concept, and they both together came up with this theory. So, what is the tenet of natural selection? What is the first tenet? Sorry, what is the first tenet of natural selection? What is the first step you require in a population for natural selection to occur? Variation. Very nice, Mrinal. We would need variation in particular uh, traits or in some of the behaviors of the organism so that natural selection can act on it. So we have two more bonus questions in this slide. What is speciation? What do we mean when we say speciation? Formation of a new species. Exactly, yes. So when there is a say there's a population that has been evolving, but say they get isolated from each other, and there is not much gene flow, there's not much gene exchange between these two populations, eventually they might separate from each other and they become two different species. So the formation of new species is called speciation. Very nice. Can you guys please give me a moment? I will be back in 2 minutes. Sorry. Uh, yes, sorry, I'm back. There was some something. So moving on. So who gave the term survival of the fittest?
Darwin.
Robert Spencer. Very nice. Yes, Shruti, you were saying something. Okay. So yes, you are correct, you guys. Herbert Spencer is the one who gave the term survival of the fittest. So let's move on to an interesting concept. What is an invasive species? Foreign species that harms. Okay, that is correct. What else? Anybody can give me a local population of species. It harms the local population of species. Okay. Yes. So, correct. So, a foreign species is basically a species that is non native, that does not belong to this habitat, but it was introduced either by humans or by mistake, by chance. So, it is introduced as anthropogenic activity. It is either introduced for a reason or it is introduced by chance. And it now affecting the native species of that area. It is harming the native species by either outcompeting them or taking their habitat because it is better adept to use the resources. Examples: Parthenium, very nice; cane toad, very nice; pathogen. Uh, what do you mean by asking pathogen? Question mark. Econiac, Harrisipis, Lantana, Hyacinth. All of them are correct. Very good. Nice. So I have some images here. So can you tell me what is this? Somebody has already named it. What is this image? Which plant is this? Which is an
Parthenium.
lantana? Very good. Which one is this? Can microbial pathogens be called invasive species? Um, Microbial pathogens be called invasive species. I don't know. It depends. I think it would depend on whether they are being introduced to another habitat where they don't really belong. But when things go to the microbial level, it is actually very difficult to, you know, separate them out. So I think they would be called invasive species if they are harming other microbes. I don't know. I would have to get back to you on this one. Lantana camera, Parthenium. Second one is Parthenium. Very good. Nice. Which is this one? You've already named this, one of you. What which one? What is this? And Anish, I will note down your question asking for microbial pathogens. Okay. Hyacinth. Yes, this is the water hyacinth. What is this? The terror of Bengal. Very nice. Yes. So there are some of these fish species that are also invasive to India. So this here is a guppy. These were kept as ornamental pets. These are also invasive species. They are now impact if they are left in a natural habitat, they will drive out all the other species in that area. These are some carp species that are invasive in India right now. And this image, I have forgotten what I had taken it off. I'm sorry. I will get back to you about this one. So yes, and these some of them were introduced. These were introduced as ornamental plants to India, but now they are all invasive species. They are harming the native species of India. Coming on to the last lecture that was given this week. So ecology. It was about ecology and evolution. So what is an adaptation, and can you give me some examples of adaptations? Adjusting to an environment. Very nice. You have uh, put it in good words. It's adjusting to an environment. So adaptation is basically any alteration, any change that happens in the structure of an organism or in the function of an organism, in the behavior of an organism, by which that organism will now become better adept to live in that particular environment. Of a sense organ to the intensity or the quality of stimulation. Yes, that is correct. So it can be both ways. Cheetahs adapting to Kuno National Park. Okay, yeah, that is correct. Cheetahs introduced, they are adapting to the national park. Large skin folds in Titicaca frog help absorb more oxygen in the lake. Nice. Light bones of flying birds was an adaptation. Yes, that is all. These all of them are correct. These are very nice examples of adaptations, and so basically adaptation is now making the bones lighter that has helped the birds to fly, because with bones like us they would not have been able to fly. And as mentioned, the Titicaca frog would not have been able to survive in the lake if it would not had these big folds of skin that could take in more oxygen from the environment. So what does it mean to say that something is genetic? What do you mean by genetic? It will be in the genes, that will be inheritable over generations of the population. Very nice, Ankita. That is correct. Relating to genes, heredity, passing of the traits. Very nice. All of you are um, correct when you come to this is what is genetic. Something, when you say that something is genetic, it basically means that it is inheritable, it is passed over generations, it is something that is coded in the genetic makeup of that organism, and it will not change unless over time across generations. So, coming to the last question, what is fitness and what are the various characteristics of fitness? The ability to live in the future, to maintain its presence in an environment. Okay. Darwin's fitness refers only to reproductive fitness. It is the capacity of a parent type of an organism to invade and displace the resident population in competition for available resources. That is correct. Mental, social, physical, and reproductive health. Okay. Reproductive capacity, more offspring, more fitness. Very nice. So, fitness does actually, yes, you're all correct. Fitness refers to the ability of an organism to leave more descendants behind in the future generations as compared to the other organisms. So it basically is going to outcompete the other organism, and somebody who is leaving behind more offspring is said to be better fit in that particular environment. And the survival of that offspring is also an important feature. So you have to leave behind more offsprings, and the offsprings have to survive in that environment. The characteristics are environment specific. Okay, very nice. So, fitness is environment specific. So, it would be wrong to say that you want to compare the fitness of a bird in India and of the same bird, say sparrows, of fitness of sparrows in India and of the same sparrows in Europe, because the environments that they're facing is very different in both these areas. What else? What else are the characteristics of fitness? Anybody? Other characteristics of fitness? Anyone? Higher survival, yes, somebody or some organism that is fitter has higher survival. Yes, species specific. That is what I was looking for. Fitness is also species specific. So the you cannot compare the fitness of one species with some other species. You cannot say that I'm going to compare the fitness of sparrows and babblers, or say sparrows and mynas, or tigers and lions. You cannot compare the species between the fitness between species. The species is particularly fitness is species specific. Yes, Lakshya. Are you are you typing out a question? Uh, okay. So let's go on. So, what are the 5 stages of natural selection? What are the 5 steps that happen for natural selection to occur? Variation, very nice. So the first step is that is important is variation. There should be variation in that population, in that area. There should be variation in traits. There should be a variation in something that is heritable. These traits should be heritable, so there should be variation in these heritable traits, so that the natural selection can happen, so that these organisms are different from each other, and some of these traits will be better adapt to that environment than these other traits, and these traits should also be heritable. Otherwise it does not make sense at all, because we are going to because it all depends on leaving behind more progeny. So then somebody has written variation, inheritance, selection, time, and adaptation. Variation is correct. Inheritance of traits is correct. Then there is something called overpopulation that Mrinal mentioned. Yes, the second step is overpopulation, where so basically you are at every step you're leaving behind more progeny than the past. There is rapid multiplication, exactly. So there is a rapid multiplication, and all of these organisms are now going to compete against each other because the resources are not enough. So there is going to be a struggle for existence. Correct. Because of these limited resources and the limited space that is present in their habitat, all of these organisms, this overpopulated population is now going to, the individuals are going to compete against each other, and some of them uh, will have to face the competition, and they will probably not be able to leave behind as many offspring as the other. They will have to face the costs of this competition, and they will get eliminated. After the struggle for existence, as I mentioned, there will be the survival of the fittest. And as Saptarishi is also mentioning in the chat box, there will be a survival of the fittest, because the ones that are not adept to living in this environment, they are going to get eliminated, and only the fitter ones are going to leave behind more progeny and hence get chosen by natural selection. And eventually, there is going to lead to a change in the gene pool. So, if earlier, say, the genes were so, because of global warming, say, there are organisms that are living in this particular temperature. So, say, organisms are, their current optima is around, I don't know, say 30 degrees Celsius. Okay, these are these. Take some example. There are some organisms, their current optimum of temperature is around 30 degrees Celsius. Now, since because of global warming, if the temperature keeps rising by say 1 or 2 degrees Celsius, and now the average temperature is around 32 degrees Celsius, so the organisms that are better able to function, some of these, if they have some genetic makeup that is slightly different and they're able to function better than other organisms at the higher temperature, they are bound to leave behind more progeny at this high temperature, and eventually the organisms that are not able to keep up with this change in temperature and they're not able to leave behind more and more offsprings, they will be eliminated, and the other ones are obviously automatically going to get chosen by natural selection. So let's come to these different types of selection that happen in nature. What are the different types of selections that happen? Stabilizing, directional. Can anybody of you, okay, can you tell me what is this first one? What is this fitness? What is this selection called? Where this broad phenotype, there were these different types of phenotypes, but eventually uh, only these three fur coats colors are getting selected. This is called, yes, stabilizing selection, as mentioned earlier as well by other people. So, this is the stabilizing selection. It is basically going to narrow your range of traits that are present in the population. That is called a stabilizing selection. What is this called? It is directional. Yes, it is a directional selection, because the selection force is directionally favoring the darker fur coats, and the lighter ones are getting uh, they're getting eliminated. What is the third one?
Disruptive.
Disruptive. Yes, very good. This is called disruptive selection, because the trait that is present in the maximum frequency is now getting reduced, and the other two traits at the extremes, they're getting selected. So this is called disruptive selection. So earlier, if say there was a normal distribution present, this is a bell-shaped curve. All of the phenotypes are present like this, and the central phenotypes have the highest frequency. Eventually, it will be called stabilizing. If the distribution gets narrower, it is called directional. If it either favors one of the two extremes, and it is called disruptive. If it favors both the extremes but not the central uh, phenotype. So that's called a bimodal distribution. Okay. So, can you guys tell me what is coevolution? What do you mean by coevolution? What do we mean when we say that some species are co-evolving?
When two different species like affect each other's evolution, that's called coevolution.
Yes, very nice, Shruti. And yes, you are correct, Anusha and Arun. So basically, if two species they're interacting and they're evolving together, both of them will impact each other's evolution, and that is what we refer to by coevolution. So they interact closely, and the species they adapt to the changes in the other species. So can you give me some common examples? Pollination, yes, there is one common example of coevolution, where the flowers they adapt to for the pollinator, and the pollinators they adapt for the flowers. Fig wasps and the fig. Yes, very good. Fig wasp and the fig is a very nice example of coevolution, where the fig wasps, um, they tend to evolve in order to, pierce the fig with their ovipositor and deposit in their eggs. But the figs are also, they are thickening their walls so that not many of these wasps can lay their eggs inside the fig. Then there is prey predator. Yeah, yes, prey predator. That is called. That will be a sort of like an evolutionary arms race. So if there is a tiger and an antelope, if the antelope can run faster, the tiger will not be able to catch it. So if the tiger is running faster, it will catch all these slower antelopes, and the faster ones will get selected. So now the antelopes are running faster. So now the faster tigers will get selected. So both of them, they're in an evolutionary arms race. Then there is the parasite in the host. Yes, very good. This also, so to give a recent example would be of COVID-19. So there was COVID-19. We were exposed to this sudden disease, this sudden epidemic, and eventually, after the first wave, our immune systems, our vaccines, they evolved. We evolved and we were able to handle the virus. But the virus also co-evolved consequently, and it became more virulent, and then there was a second wave. And this cyclical evolution is sort of called coevolution. Orphish, orchid, and the moth. Yes, that is correct. Yucca plant and the yucca moth. Yes, these are correct examples of coevolution. Now let's come to this example. What do you see here? What do you see in this image? It's like gene to gene concept. Uh, what is gene to gene concept? Whose petal looks like a bee to attract. Yes, very good. So there's this orchid which basically has evolved to look like the female wasp, and or the female bee, and it, hence it attracts the male bees, which will look at it, they will think that this is the female that is perched on this flower and waiting to be spotted by the male, so as to carry out breeding, and the male is going to come and is going to mate with the orchid instead, because it is going to misinterpret the orchid as the bee, and eventually it is going to pick up the pollen from here and going to deposit it on another orchids. So this is a coevolution where the orchid looks more and more and more like a realistic bee, and the males, they get confused. But they're also evolving in order to, make out which is a real bee and which is an orchid. Coevolution, pseudo copulation. Yes, this is pseudo copulation. Correct. What are these? What can you see here? Sexual deceit. Yes, you're correct. What do you see here? What do we have here? Brood parasitism, very nice. Egg mimicry. Yes, so a very good example of coevolution is between hosts and brood parasites. So, brood parasites, can anybody tell me what is a brood parasite? What are brood parasites? Cuckoo, yes, that's an example of a brood parasite, but what do they do? What are brood parasites? Nobody? Rely on others to raise their progeny. Yes, that is correct. So brood parasite refers to these birds that technically they do not bring up their own progeny. They do not, incubate their own eggs. They lay their eggs in other birds' nests, and they hope that these other birds will not be able to make out which one is their progeny and which one is the brood parasite. And they also bring up the brood parasite's chick as their own brood, as their own progeny, and they feed them And so here to so eventually you would think that, okay, why is the host still tolerating it? Why is it not just eliminating the egg? So what is happening here is that the host is also evolving. It is now able to better, figure out which one is their own egg and which is a different egg. And they throw out their eggs while cleaning their nests. They throw out the eggs that don't look like their own, or they will abandon the nest if there are too many, brood parasitic eggs. But the brood parasites, they co-evolve, and they have been making their eggs look more and more similar to the host's eggs. Like here you can see the reed warbler egg and the cuckoo egg. If somebody just hands you these two, you would say it's the same. It belongs to the same species, but no, they are different. Both of these eggs, like, they belong to different species. It's quite remarkable how brood parasites can actually mimic this. Here in the blue-headed wagtail, even though the egg of the cuckoo is bigger, but it somehow mimics the pattern of the wagtail's egg. And mind you, this is all the common cuckoo eggs, but it's how they are laying in different hosts' nests. So they're able to adapt to the hosts that are present in their locality. This is the red-backed strike, and this is still the cuckoo. The eggs look quite similar, but they're always slightly bigger in the cuckoo's case. And this concept will come later. But this is also this a bigger egg attracts the host itself. The host thinks that since it's a bigger egg, it will be able to survive better, and it's going to incubate that with a greater probability than its own eggs. And here is an example from India. This is the quail's eggs, and these three here are the crow's eggs. So you would see that they look quite similar to each other when they are just present together as a bunch. And the quail just hopes that the crow will not be able to make out that which one is their own and which one is the quail's eggs. And also, coevolution occurs at another level in this is how after egg mimicry, when the chicks are born, the chicks also in their initial stages, they look a lot like the host's chicks, and they also mimic their sound so that the host thinks that this is my own chick, and it when it comes back with food, it will feed the parasite instead. So these were all the concepts that were covered in the first three lectures. Thank you guys, and now I'm open to taking any questions that you might have, and we can go over some of the concepts that you might have an issue with. Otherwise, if somebody, like, if you have no doubts, you can leave the session. I will be here for. Is it possible to share slides? Yes, these slides will be shared. I will share a Google Drive link, and it'll be open access. You guys can look at these slides and go through them. I will put the link in the announcements tab of NPTEL. Thank you. Thank you, guys. It was a great first session. Anybody has any doubts? Do you know how to access slides of NPTEL lecturers? I don't think those slides are accessible. Those only the videos you can watch as many times as you want, but I don't think you can get those slides. Thank you. Guys, anybody has any. Thank you. Anybody has any questions from any of the first three lectures, anything? Otherwise, if you now come up with some doubts, you can ask them in the Monday and the Tuesday tutorial as well. But if you have any doubts, I am here to address them. Otherwise, you can also put up your doubts in the forum, and they will be answered as soon as possible in the course forum. Thank you. Okay, then I will stop sharing. Can microbial pathogens be an example of invasive species? Yes, Anish, I will get back to you about this question. I have written it down, and I will ask around and get back to you about this question. Example of invasive species. I don't know the answer yet. Ah, yes. Yes, Priya, you have your hand raised. Okay. Guys, if nobody has any doubts, should I close the session?